How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Pei Zayin, Daf Paz. Like my friend Paz. He's in Morocco now. Paz is in Morocco now. Paz is in Morocco. Today we're studying Daf Pei Zayin, Daf Paz. Mestechta BavaBasra. So new. Givaldi, cheve. So the beginning of the daf is shtickle ribbis, and then some other stuff. All right, here we go. BavaBasra, Givaldi. All right, we're going to start in daf Pei Vav of Masechta BavaBasra. Honestly, only a little bit more than halfway through the Amud. It says Rav Shmuel Damar Tarvayu. So Rav Shmuel, they both say, Kor b'shloshim ani mocher loch. So if Shimon says to Ruvain, I'm selling you a core for 30 selas, okay? I'm selling you a core of, wheat for 30 selas. Now, a core is 30 sa'ah, right? Meaning the measurement sa'ah, the currency selas, right? So 30 sa'ah for 30 selah, but he doesn't say that, and that's important. What he says is, I'm selling you one core for 30 selas. So if that's the case, so yachol lachzor bo afilu b'so achron. So if that's the case, so then, so long as Shimon has not doled out to Ruvain all 30 sa'ah's worth, right, an entire core's worth of wheat or whatever he's selling, let's say wheat. So then it's not yet Ruvain's, right? It's not complete yet until all 30 sa'ahs, until the entire core has been given to Ruvain, has been measured out for Ruvain. And only at that point does Ruvain own it. Okay. But if he says I'm selling you 30, if he says I'm selling you one core for 30 selas, i.e. each sa'ah for a selah, so rishon kona. So if that's the case, then be'etzem, Ruvain is acquiring, is being kona each sa'ah as it comes in, and therefore if 29 sa'ah, I guess Shimon measures out for Ruvain 29 sa'ah, and then he says, you know what, that's it, I'm done. So Ruvain at least, so nobody can go back on the 29 sa'ah that have been doled out. But the final sa'ah, okay, Shimon is chozer on. After all, he said, I'm selling you one core for 30 selas, i.e. one selah per sa'ah. So therefore, if he doled out 29 sa'ah, so Ruvain receives 29 sa'ah. However, if he says, I'm selling you one core of wheat for 30 selah, well then it's a package deal. It's all or none. Therefore, if Shimon doles out to Ruvain 30 sa'ah, so then it belongs to Ruvain, nobody can be choser. But 29 would not be enough. Alright, let's start again. Rav Shmuel Damar Tarvayu, Rav and Shmuel both say, so, Kor b'shloshim ani mocher loch, that I'm selling you a core for 30 selas, yachol lachzor bo afilu b'so achrona. So Shimon can renege even up to the last sa'ah, because until it's 30 sa'ah, until it's a complete core, there's no dice. Where am I? Kor b'shloshim sa'ah b'sela ani mochelach. But if he says I'm selling you a core for 30 selas, i.e. a selah per sa'ah, so rishon konasin, Ruvain is kona as the sa'ahs come in, and even after 29 sa'ahs, Shimon can pull the plug and say, that's it, we're stopping here, and Ruvain will get 29 sa'ahs. Okay, fine. 1 second. Okay, I noticed that one of my other phones was face up, and I was nervous that if it lights up, it'll bother me. So I flipped it over. Alright, so where are we? Alright, Tashma, come and here. Im haisa mida So we had said in the Brisa, I think it was 2 days ago now, right? By the 4 midas of the by selling stuff. So we said im hoisa mida shel echad men, if the measure that they were measuring with belonged to one of them. So let's say it belonged to Reuven, the buyer. Rishon kona. So he is kone as it comes in. Even though the measure was not complete. So kigon to amale hin b'shneim asar sloim log b'sel ani mochilach. Meaning the question being, over here we're saying that if Shimon says, I'm selling you a core for 30, well then Reuven doesn't get anything until the entire core is measured out. But yet we had that brisa the other day that says that if the vessel belongs to one of them, right, let's say it belongs to Reuven, so then as the produce is going in, Reuven is kona it. So we explained, well, that's because it was a similar scenario, right? Meaning, because we had said just now, Rav and Shmuel had said that if Shimon says, I'm selling you one core for 30 sellers, i.e., one seller per sa'a, well then, as it comes in, Reuven would be kona. So here also, when the Brisa says that if the measuring vessel belonged to one of them, well then, so for example, if it belonged to Reuven, then Reuven would be kona as it comes in. It's because it was a similar kind of statement. Kigon to Amar le, that Shimon says to Reuven, hin b'shnei maser sloim, I'm going to sell you a hin's worth of, wine or oil for 12 sellers. Log, which is a log, which I guess is 1/12 of a hin, besela for a seller ani mochilach. So that is why in that case, as it comes in, Reuven, as each hin comes in, that rhymes. As each hin comes in. So the only problem is that it's the lugis that are coming in. A hin b'shnei maser sloim log b'sela animo. So it's the logs that are the individuals. As the logs come in, so then that Reuven is kona in that case, if it's his vessel. Uchdam Rav Kana, like Rav Kana says in the context of the korbanis, shnoso sayu bahin, right? That it's like, right? It says in the pasuk, right? It says chatzi ayin lapar v'shlishis ayin la'ayil v'revius ayin lakeves yoyin. So those hins, those measurements, they had like notches in the measurements, in the measuring cups, that you would know exactly what it was. So they had kind of notches in the measuring cups, and as the log would come in, so they would know as the log would come in. So it still rhymes if you make a mistake at the beginning. If you accidentally say hin first, well then you can rhyme with in. So as the log comes in, so in rhymes with hin. Anyways, so be'etzem, if the stipulation of the sale indicated that they were kind of like, that the whole was kind of broken down into smaller segments, so then those segments can be acquired individually. Okay, it's very gewaldige stuff. However, now we get to some ribisi kind of stuff. However, you remember BavaBasra, league of its own. Ezu Neshech, league of its own. I mean, Ezu Neshech could, Ezu Neshech. It's so funny. I don't know. It's kind of funny, my relationship with BavaBasra. I don't know that there's any particular parak that I particularly love, but BavaBasra as a whole, I absolutely adore. Like Ezu Neshech, how can you love Ezu Neshech? It drives you crazy. But it's as conceptually, BavaBasra is just its own thing. Akoponim. So shtickle ribis gewaldig. Toshma hasocher es apoyol lasos imo lagoren Hayom bedinar vilagoren yofe sela. Also the anusimenu. Who could tell me what this is talking about? So be'etzem, Ruvain is a farm worker. Okay, is that what it's called? A farm. What's the thing called where you grow like wheat? A farm, right? A farm. Why not a wheat farm? That's the thing, right? A wheat farm? Yeah. It's not, no, because like in old McDonald's farm, they were all just animals there. Right? On his farm, he had a wheat. No, I don't think that was a thing. I think it was like cows and pigs and horses and stuff. On his farm, he had a wheat. E-I-E-I-O. Yeah, because what sound does a wheat make? Maybe the sound of like blowing in the wind. I guess old McDonald was, okay, I guess his farm was not a wheat farm, I guess. Alright, I'll go upon him. So, but a wheat farm, I think that's a thing. Let's assume it's a thing. So Shimon's got a wheat farm, and he's gonna hire Ruvain for the harvest. So now it's Nisan. I guess the harvest isn't quite yet. I guess it's a little bit later. I think the barley is early. I think the wheat is a little later. But then again, I'm not a farmer. I'll go upon him. So either way, the concept is going to be the same, even if I don't know the specifics, practically speaking. It's Nisan, okay? And Shimon knows that it's going to be the harvest soon, right? Rashbam gives an example. 100 days later, it's going to be the harvest, let's say. So right now, he knows that soon enough, it's going to be the harvest, okay? And Shimon wants to lock in Ruvain as a worker for the harvest. Now, it's not yet the harvest. It will be the harvest. In 3 months from now, it's going to be the harvest. And Shimon wants to sort of arrange with Ruvain now, in advance, that Ruvain is going to work on his farm, on his field, during the harvest. And I guess he's going to work for, whatever it is. Okay. So now, yes, I guess the assumption is that it'll be, let's say, 30 days of work. Okay, the harvest is going to be 30 days of work. So Shimon works out with Ruvain. I'll give you, right, and I guess that there's also value to Ruvain in getting paid now in advance. Right? He's getting money up front now. And so basically, Ruvain and Shimon work out a deal, a few months before the harvest. Shimon says, look, I will give you, you're going to work. Shimon says to Reuven, look, you're going to work for me for 30 days during the harvest. I will pay you right now in advance. I'm going to pay you 30 dinars. I'm going to pay you 30 dinars right now, a dinar per day. I will pay you for your work up front right now. Now, Givaldik, the thing is that comes the harvest, farmhands, I think that's the thing, a farmhand, right? Isn't that what's called a farmhand? Isn't that like somebody works on a farmhand, somebody who helps out on the farm? I think that's the thing. So the thing is, during the harvest, a farmhand, the going rate per day is not 1 dinar during the harvest, during peak season when there's a high demand for farmhands. It's 4 dinars per day. Is 4 dinars a sela? I'd have to look that up. Hakoponim. So here's the thing. Shimon is paying Ruvain right now 30 dinars, 1 dinar per day for Ruvain to work during the harvest for 30 days. The thing is, where this gets tricky, now keep in mind, ribis is only for loans. This is not a loan. I think that this would be schirus. I don't know. This is not a loan. This is definitely not a loan. He's paying him for work, okay? So this is not ribis. But it's similar to ribis. How is it similar to ribis? It's similar to ribis because comes the harvest, Shimon is getting 4 times the value that he initially invested. Initially, Shimon paid Ruvain 30 dinars for 30 days of work, 1 dinar per day. And now, several months later, and then for several months, basically, Shimon had nothing to show for his investment, right? For the next few months, right? Meaning Shimon today is investing, is giving Reuven 30 dinars. For the next 3 months, Reuven is not doing anything for Shimon. Shimon's just waiting. And now comes the harvest. Reuven is finally getting to work. But now Reuven, the going rate of a farmhand now during the harvest is not what Shimon paid, 1 dinar per day. It's actually 4 dinars per day, which means that now, several months later, finally when Shimon is essentially getting paid back by Reuven finally providing value for him, he's actually being paid back 4 times the amount that he initially invested, that he initially paid. So it's similar to ribis in that, right, I think it was Rav Nachman in Ezu Neshech who defined ribis as agar noter, that you're charging extra because you had to wait, right? What's ribis? Shimon lends Reuven $100 and he says, pay me back in a month. Because Shimon has to wait around a month for Reuven to pay him back, he says, look, when you pay me back, don't pay me back 100, pay me back 150. Because I'm waiting around for you. Because Shimon's waiting around with nothing to show for his money until it's due, so that waiting around, Shimon feels entitles him to charge more, to charge a premium and get paid back 150 instead of 100. That's ribis, because right, getting paid extra because you had to wait. And therefore this is similar, that basically Shimon is paying Reuven 30 dinars, 1 dinar per day, and then Shimon waits around for a while until the harvest. Finally comes the harvest, now finally Shimon is getting his value, and he's getting it back times 4. Because for the 1 dinar that he paid, he's getting paid back 4 dinars worth of value. So it's similar to ribis. Okay. So again, from the beginning, Toshma, come in here. Hasocher is apoyol lasos imo legorin, that if Shimon hires Reuven now in advance to work for him during the harvest, Hayom bedinar, at the rate of 1 dinar per day, and that is what he pays Reuven right now. And I think Rashbam, I guess, mentions 30 days for 30 dinars, 1 dinar per day. But vilagerin yofesela. The thing is that comes the harvest time, the going rate for a farmhand is not a dinar; it's a sela, which I think is 4 dinars. I believe so. I believe a seller is 4 dinars. Does it say that anywhere? Come on, it's got to say it somewhere. Anyways, Dahainu dal dinar. Yeah, exactly. A seller is 4 dinars. So vilagorin yof seller. But now comes the harvest time. Actually, Reuven's providing 4 dinars, 1 seller's worth of value. Also, so that's not allowed. It's not allowed because it's like ribis. Aval, but im schoroi me'ayom bedinar liyom v'lagoren yofe sela mutter. But aval im schor me'ayom. But if Shimon starts paying him already from today, and he says be'etzem, one second. Yeah. Okay. So if he says, I'm going to hire you for the next 100 days, says Rashbam, mea yom b'mea dinar, yeah, v'nosan lo scharo, achshav. Okay. Now, but if Shimon pays Reuven from now, right? He says, Reuven, I'm going to hire you for the next 100 days. And I'm going to pay you 100 dinars, which comes out to 1 dinar per day. So in that case, since he's hiring him from today, right? 1 dinar per day from now until the end of harvest, for the next 100 days, well then that would be permitted. Okay, fine. Okay. So where am I? So from the top line of Pezayin Amud Aleph, Aval im scharu me'ayom me'ayom. But if he hires him from today for the next 100 days, bedinar layom, at the rate of 1 dinar per day for the next 100 days starting today, Now, of course, at the time of the harvest, however, meaning part of the next 100 days is going to be the harvest, and during the harvest, the going rate is not 1 dinar, it's 4 dinars, but nonetheless, it's mutter. Now, let's stop it for a second. Why is it mutter? It's mutter because the assumption is that it's all one package. It's all one thing. That when he says, I'm paying you for the next 100 days, a dinar per day, it's all considered one package. It's not considered like separate agreements. Now, let's go weiter now. Now, if what we were saying, which is that when Shimon says to Reuven, I'm selling you a core for 30 sellas, each sa'ah for 1 sellah. So when we say Rishon Kona, and as each sa'ah comes in, Reuven is Kona, because they're each considered separate. Well, if that's the case, well then, Hachanami, kama mipasik posik, v'aser lehanos mehemenu. Okay, fine. Alright. Okay, v'aser lehanos mehemenu. So now, if that's the case, that when he says 1 core for 30, each saw for a selah, each one is considered separate, well then, when he says, I'm going to give you 100 dinars for the next 100 days, so each day should be considered separate. It shouldn't be considered like he's just paying him one amount for the whole time. No, he's paying him 1 dinar per day. Well, if that's the case, comes the harvest, and now he's paying him on the harvest, and he's paying him for today, but today is worth, it's no longer a dinar, it's now 4 dinars, and yet he paid him, meaning he paid him at the beginning up front. Sorry, I didn't make this clear. He paid him up front the 100 dinars, right? So he's not paying him 1 dinar each day. He's paying him now up front 100 dinars, which comes out to 1 dinar per day. But if that's the case, and if we say that each day would essentially be separate, well then comes the harvest, when the going rate for a farmhand is 4 dinars, he's now getting 4 dinars of value because he paid up front 1 dinar, which means that he's basically getting 4 dinars of value because he had to wait around between the time that he paid and the time that he's getting the value. So if we view it all kind of as one package, so he's paying him up front for 100 days, Beseder, that's fine. There's nothing specific to the harvest. But if we say that 100 dinars for 100 days, 1 dinar comes out to 1 dinar per day, well then even if he pays in advance, well then each day is considered separate. Comes the harvest, that dinar that corresponds to that day really should be 4 dinars, and Shimon's only, is getting 4 times the value of what he paid because he had to wait around. It seems like ribis. So again, from the top of the Amud. But if Shimon hires Reuven from today for the next 100 days for 100 dinars, and he pays him now today, b'dinar layom, for 1 dinar per day, but at the time of the harvest, a farmhand's rate is 4 sellas, but still comes the harvest, Reuven is still, Shimon is still kind of paying Reuven that initial amount of, meaning he initially paid him for his work during the harvest 1 sellah, but now he's getting 4 sellas of value. That if we say that when it's 1 core for 30, each saw for 1 selah, I'm selling to Rishon Kona, then each saw is considered its own thing. Well then, meaning it's Kona, each saw as it comes in, i.e. it's not one big lump sum, one big whole, but rather it's made up of smaller parts. Well then, Achanami come here as well. Kama mipasik pasak. Each day should be considered a separate thing, and it's not considered like one whole. And therefore, that should not be allowed, because comes the harvest, those days, Shimon is getting 4 dinars worth of value on his prior payment of 1 dinar. Midina layom v'lagorin yafasela mutter amai. Why should that be considered allowed? V'agar noterli, who? Basically, Shimon is getting this extra value for the fact that he had to wait around. Why is that allowed? But now Rava points out what I had mentioned at the beginning. One second, we're talking about schirus over here. Now we're not talking about a loan. Shimon didn't lend Ruvain this money that Ruvain has to pay him back with interest. He's hiring Ruvain. There's no concept of ribis when it comes to hiring. Mashna ratio, mashna seifa. What's the difference then between the ratio where he pays him 30 dinars for work that he's going to do in the future versus the seifa where he pays him a dinar per day starting from now? Well, ratio de lo ka'avid ba'adei mehashta. The reason why we say that the first case is forbidden is because that looks more like ribis. It's obviously not ribis because we're not talking about a loan, but it's a similar concept. Right? In the ratio, Shimon was paying Ruvain 30 zuz for work that he's going to do in the future, and then they wait around for a while, and then finally comes payday when Ruvain's finally getting to work, and Shimon's getting 4 times the value. So that seems like he's basically getting paid more because he was waiting around. Seifa, whereas in the Seifa, the ka'avid ba'adei mehashta, that already their contract starts now, well then, lo mechze ki'agonotoli, it doesn't really look like he's kind of waiting around, that he's getting paid more because he was waiting around, and therefore it's going to be, we don't make any kind of a gezerah there. The Mishnah had said that if you had flax, if you have a flax field, and then Ruvain kind of chaps a shtick of flax, so he's kona all the flax. I don't understand. What, just because he chapped a shtick of flax, all of a sudden he gets all the flax? So Rav Sheshes says, here what are we talking about? To Amar Le, that Shimon says to Ruvain, Lech yapelach karka kolshu. Go and be'etzem make a chazaka. Go and improve the karka shtickle, harvest it a little bit, vikni kol mashaleh, and by doing so, by making that shtickle chazaka, by harvesting a little bit of it, so then you'll make a chazaka on all of the flax. Even though Reuven isn't acquiring the field, just the flax, but by making a chazaka on a shtickle flax, he's making a chazaka on all the flax that's connected to the ground. Very interesting. Okay, now we get to a new Mishnah Mocher Yayin Vashemen Lachavero. If Shimon is selling wine or oil to Ruvain, Vihukru o Huzlu, and the price of wine or oil went up or went down, it fluctuated. Im ad shelo nismale samida la mocher. Well, until the measuring vessel is filled up, until that point it belongs to the seller. Mishin ismale samida, once the measuring vessel is filled up, lelokeach, then it belongs to the buyer. It's like we learned the other day when it's somebody else's vessel, right? It comes from that brisa, right? What did the brisa say? The brisa on Pehei, it said, Tashma, I've midas b'mochun, ad shalon ismala mida lamoch, mishin ismala mida, lelokeach pamet v'mida she'ena shel shneim. Right, when the vessel belongs to neither one of them. Okay. And if the middleman was among them, and the Gemara is going to kind of explain this, but right, so the point is that it's the vessel of the middleman. And if he was, so basically you would have a middleman who would basically like buy, wine and oil from a seller, and then he would kind of find a buyer for that stuff. So if they're using, let's say, the barrel of the middleman for measuring, if the middleman was with them, so if the barrel that they're using for measuring breaks, well then it's the middleman's loss if he is with them. When a seller is selling a buyer wine or oil, he needs to, I guess when he's done emptying it out into, giving it to Ruvain, he needs to make sure that he waits until there are 3 final drops drip into it, into Ruvain's vessel, I guess. Just to make sure that he's, I guess, giving as much as possible to Reuven. Here, Kino mitzis. Now, once he's done dripping into Reuven's vessel, and the seller puts down his own vessel and stands it upright, well then, whatever collects on the bottom at that point, Arehu Shalmocher, belongs to the seller, belongs to Shimon, after he's already gotten those drops into Reuven's vessel. A person who a clerk, somebody who works in a store, I believe who's very busy, right? Where am I? Okay, somebody works in a store, is very busy, so he doesn't have to do the whole dripping thing. Rabbi Yehuda says that Erev Shabbos, as it's getting late, so then Pater, and the Gemara is going to explain what exactly Rabbi Yehuda is going on. It says the Gemara, ha mida deman. Okay, so when we say that once it's filled up, it belongs to the buyer, until it's filled up, it belongs to the seller, whose vessel is it? If it's the buyer's vessel, well then, ad shelo nismales mida lemocher mida delokeach he. Well, if it belongs to the vessel, to the buyer, well then, the whole as the vessel gets filled up, it belongs to the buyer, not to the seller. Okay, so if we say though that the vessel belongs to the seller, well, he. But then why are we saying that once it gets filled up, it belongs to the buyer? It's the seller's vessel. It should still be the seller's. It's the vessel belongs to the middleman. So it is neither the buyer's nor the seller's. And we're saying that while it is filling up, it still belongs to the seller. Once it is filled up, at that point it belongs to the buyer. But one second, but the Mishnah then continues and says, and if there was a middleman there and the vessel breaks, then it's the middleman's loss. If we're saying, if we finally get to the Seifa where we're talking about a middleman, that implies that up until then we're not talking about a middleman. Reisha mida below Saiser Seifa b'Saiser Atzmo. No. In the Reisha, it is the middleman's vessel. The difference is that in the Reisha, it's the middleman's vessel, but the middleman himself is not there at the time in the Reisha. In the Seifa, the middleman is there. And when the middleman is there, if the barrel breaks, then it's his loss. Here, kino mitzis arei hu shel mocher. So if after the seller, drips those 3 drips into the buyer's vessel, he then puts down the barrel upright, so whatever is on goes down to the bottom is the seller's. Kisalik Rabbi Elazar, when Rabbi Elazar made Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkechel Ziri, he found Ziri Omarle, and he says to Ziri, Mi kan tana de asnaye Rav midos. Is there anybody here in Eretz Yisrael who learned the halachis of midos, of measurements, with Rav? Achvoye, is that the right? Achvoye, probably. Achvoye, Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. So Ziri pointed him to Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi. Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi says to Rabbi Elazar, "My kokashalach, how can I help you? What's your question?" So Rabbi Elazar says that's not that we learn in our Mishnah Kino mitzis arei ushamocher, that if after Shimon drips those drips into Reuven's vessel, he then puts down the vessel, whatever goes to the bottom belongs to Shimon, the seller. But we learn in Trumas, Hirkina umitza rezo truma, that if, Shimon, Shimon has truma, he's got tevel, he's got like 100 logs of oil, and he takes a measure of 2 logs, and he's going to give that to Reuven the Kohen as truma. So we say there, if he takes a measure of 2 logs of oil and then puts it into Reuven the Kohen's kli, and he drips it, whatever, into Reuven's kli, and then he puts down his own vessel, so whatever goes to the bottom is truma, it's not Shimon's. So Yitzchak bar Avdimi responds, look, the reason why we say in our Mishnah that whatever goes to the bottom of the barrel belongs to Shimon is because Reuven doesn't care. Meaning, Meaning, Reuven is buying, whatever he's buying from Shimon, let's say oil from Shimon, and Shimon pours it into Reuven's vessel, he drips it a few times at the end, and then he puts down the vessel. Whatever goes in the bottom, Reuven's not going to sit there for the next hour with the vessel overturned over his vessel so he can get every last drop. At a certain point, Reuven, it's negligible, and Reuven goes on with his life. The thing is, when it comes to Truma, and Truma is also Lazarim. I mean, as much as possible, it has to go to, all of it has to go to Reuven. So that is why by Truma, even the stuff that goes to the bottom is still Truma, whereas by over here we say the stuff that goes to the bottom, Reuven is not going to be Maccabee, he's going to go on with his life, it's going to be Miyash. And the store owner, the person working in the store, he does not need to do this dripping thing. And Rabbi Yehuda then had said that on Erev Shabbos, as it gets late, he's potter. So Ibai asked the kasha, what's Rabbi Yehuda talking about? Rabbi Yehuda, Reisha kari l'kula or Dilma Asefa kari v'lachumra? Is Rabbi Yehuda going on the Reisha, where we say that the seller needs to drip it, give those 3 drips, and Rabbi Yehuda is saying, but if it's Erev Shabbos, he doesn't have to, it's a kula. Or do we say that when we say that the clerk doesn't need to do the dripping thing, that's only on Erev Shabbos, and therefore he's being machmir. So Tashma, the Tana that we learn about Rabbi Omer says, Rabbi Erev Shabbos mchashecha chenvani part of pnei chenvani tarud. That on Erev Shabbos the chenvani doesn't need to drip as it gets late because he's too busy, he's got a lot going on. Meaning, but by default he would have to drip. I.e., Rabbi Yehuda is being machmir to say that everybody needs to drip, just that a chenvani doesn't need to on Erev Shabbos as it gets late because he's very busy. Wow. Okay, friends, that was the Pei Zayin of Masechet BavaBasra. We're going to stop there. Well, what do we talk about today? We talked about the concept of kor b'shloshim soa b'sela. That was very interesting, and how that relates to ribbit. We kind of got shtickle into ribbis, which is interesting. And peace out.